Hello, welcome back to Adventures in Board Gaming. I'm Shannon, and today we're going to be doing a playthrough of Too Many Bones. Today we are facing Gendricks as our Tyrant, and we are going to be using Gasket and Tink as our Gearlocks. These are both add-on characters. We are going to be playing a mixture of some expansions today, so we'll be seeing some encounter cards from Age of Tyranny as well as 40 Days in Daelore. We'll be seeing baddies from the base game Undertow and 40 Days in Daelore, as well as loot from both the base game and the Undertow expansion. We are going to dive right in with our gameplay, and our day one encounter is called Council in Chaos. Out! Get out! The walls of the council chambers shake and do little to muffle the screaming. The doors burst open and two members of the Gaerlock Council are thrown to the street. They offer little resistance as the guards lead them at spear point to the gates. They both turn and make eye contact, sad, fearful eye contact, shaking their heads in sadness, or maybe warning. One of them speaks as she exits town, presumably forever. Flipping it over, we can see that there are two choices. The barracks is unguarded. Take this key. Feels a bit unsettling looting our own barracks. If we choose this option, each of our Gearlocks get 3 loot. Or, meet me at the bend. I can help you. And this would give us 2 training points for each of our Gearlocks, and if we choose to train in attack, we would automatically succeed. No matter which option we choose, we are going to get 1 progress point, and for Gendricks, we need 8 progress points to face him. Now, I'm going to choose to go with the second option, meeting at the bend, to get the 2 training points. 3 loot each is tempting, but Gasket can't really use loot in the traditional way, and also does not have a lot of HP, as you'll see in a moment. So we really need to get them trained up a bit before we have our first combat. So this is Gasket. He is considered a Gearlock, but works a little bit differently. So looking at his base stats, we can see he only starts with 1 health chip, has 4 dexterity, only 1 attack, and 4 defense. Starts with a couple dice on his mat. The first is the Hydro Valve. This is a die that has to be rolled every turn. We also have the primary Canister. This goes up in the locked slots during a combat and is essentially his fuel source that is consumed to use skills. And then we also have this Power Converter. This is a counter, and once we get some power in there, we can use that in order to heal Gasket. Gasket's innate is that he is a steambot, and on top of starting with these 3 dice, any skills that he uses on his turn are not exhausted. They go back on his mat. And also at the start of battle, Gasket gets to take half of his defense stat in defense dice in his active slots. So we do have 2 training points to use on Gasket at this time, and I think that the very first thing that we need to do is give Gasket another health. So we will do that. And of course, anytime we increase our health stat, we get that HP chip right away. I think the second training point we're going to use on training attack, especially because this encounter lets us automatically succeed at training in attack. So that is what we are going to do for today's training on Gasket. Moving over to Tink. Tink is a bot builder. So in terms of his base stats, we're starting with 3 health, 4 dexterity, and only 1 attack, 1 defense. As part of Tink's innate, he starts with this build die and this spider bot die. Tink is actually able to put this bot into play as an ally, and we'll see how that works when we get into our first combat. For now, in terms of training, what I would like to do is give Tink another health. And I think we're also going to attempt to train Tink's defense up. So in order to train defense, we need to roll our stat in defense dice and not roll any bones. We get one reroll, and we were successful. And the last part of our reward for day 1 is our progress point. So we are 1/8 of the way towards Gendricks. Moving into the end of day steps, we don't have any trove loot or loot to deal with, but both of our gearlocks are going to scout ahead. So we'll roll the d6 for Gasket. Gasket rolled a 3, that means he can look at a 1-point baddie. And Tink got a 2, so we're also looking at a 1-point baddie for Tink. So Gasket is scouting ahead at this Kobold Tracker. With 2 hit points, a very high initiative of 6, and it is hardy compound, so at most it can take 1 damage per turn, and also the number of attack dice it rolls is related to what round we are on. It is ranged, hitting the weakest gearlock. I'm not too worried about this Kobold Tracker, so we're going to go ahead and leave that on top. And then Tink has spotted this Bog Ribbits. So 3 hit points, an initiative of 3. It rolls no attack or defense dice, but has 2 abilities, Secrete 1 and Poison 1. Secrete 1 means that if you attack the Bog Ribbits, it will put a Poison 1 on you. So it's not only poisoning on its own turn, but as a reaction to you hitting it. And Poison 1 is this effect die, which means that once you have that on your character, at the start of your turn, you will take 1 true damage. This Bog Ribbits is hitting at ranged, the weakest gearlock. Since we just put a baddie at the top of the stack that is also ranged hitting the weakest, we don't want to have too many of those in play at the same time. So I'm going to cycle this down to the bottom of the stack. And that is the end of day 1. At the start of day 2, the very first thing we need to do is turn our day counter. And then we will jump right in with our day 2 encounter. Today's encounter is Honor Thy Griffin. A dart protrudes from its neck, indicating it has been struck with some sort of sleeping toxin. Otherwise, seeing an honor griffin in such a defenseless position would surely be the setup for a trap. Not that it couldn't be trapped anyway. There's plenty of reason for anything harboring ill intent to camp outside the gates of Obendar in hopes of a quick bit of thievery. All the same, there is an opportunity to get a free couple of strikes on this griffin before it fights back, or perhaps attempt to hop on and go for a ride to rain down destruction from above. Flipping this card over, we have 2 options, and we can see that both will result in a combat. Our first option is take out the griffin before it comes to. Our BQ would be baddie points, and we would add the honor griffin on top of that, which is a 20-point baddie. We would place the honor griffin on the baddie melee starting position in lane 1, and we would ignore the symbol on it that would call in 2 extra 5-point baddies. The honor griffin starts with only 3 HP and is stunned for the first 2 rounds, so it wouldn't take turns the first 2 rounds. Our second option is to take the griffin for a joyride. Our BQ is baddie points. We would choose a single gearlock to gain +2 dex and the skill flight. We would place the gearlock chip stack right on the griffin. At the start of round 5, the gearlock is thrown from the griffin and takes 5 damage, with the griffin then removed from play. It's a very interesting decision to make. We can see that if we're successful, we'll get 1 progress. 1 training point and 1 loot each, but if we choose to take out the griffin, we get an extra training point. I think that I am up for a challenge and I would really like that extra training point, so we're going to try to take out the griffin. So we have our griffin here, and then the rest of our BQ is going to consist of 4 1-point baddies, being 2 gearlocks and on day 2. So we have our 4 1-point baddies, the honor griffin going on top. So let's take a look at this honor griffin. It should have 8 HP, but the encounter has told us to start it with 3, and it would have an initiative of 5. It rolls 5 attack dice and has the abilities dive, flight, and stun. So flight means that after it attacks, if it's not already in flight, it's going to go in flight and become untargetable for the next turn. Then the next time it attacks, once it's in flight, it's going to come out of flight for a turn. Essentially, baddies with flight are going to be untargetable every other turn. Dive means that when it's coming out of flight, it is going to position itself beside the weakest gearlock on the playmat. And then we can see 2 bones beside the keyword stun, meaning that if the griffin rolls 2 bones, it will stun its target, and that target will have to miss its next turn. It does hit melee and the strongest gearlock. We are going to try to take this out before it gets to do any attacks. So we will take our 3 HP, our lane marker, and it did say to put it in the melee position on lane 1. That's where it would go anyways, and so it's at the top of our BQ. And setting its initiative to 5. Next up, we have a Kobold Tracker. So we have already seen this when we were scouting. 2 hit points, an initiative of 6. Rolling the number of attack dice equal to the round that we're on, and which is what the compound means. And it's also hardy, meaning it can take at most 1 damage per turn. Attacking ranged, the weakest gearlock. So let's take our 2 HP, our lane 2 marker, and it goes in the ranged spot with its initiative of 5. Third baddie coming into play is a Troll Romper. So with 3 hit points, an initiative of 2, rolling 1 attack at melee, and the 2 abilities here are Thick Skin and Careless. Thick Skin means that when you do damage to it, the first damage does not count. And then with a bone beside the Careless, if it rolls a bone on its turn, it will do damage to itself. So we have our lane 3 tracker and our 3 HP. And being melee, it's going to go right there with its initiative of 2 on the initiative tracker. And our 4th baddie right now is going to be this Kobold Tenderfoot. So 2 hit points, 2 initiative, and this is also hardy and compound. The difference between these 2 is that this kobold is actually melee, hitting the weakest gearlock. So again, our 2 HP, our lane 4 tracker, and going in the melee spot, setting its initiative to 2. We do have 1 baddie left in our BQ. We're just going to leave that off to the side for now because we are at our maximum of 4 baddies on the board. Let's go ahead and roll initiative for Gasket and Tink, both with an initiative of 4. 4 puts Tink and Gasket here in the middle. And then we need to put Gasket and Tink on the battlefield. Both are melee ranged. Their attacks are melee, but if they'd like to, they could start in ranged spots on the board. But we do need to make sure that we kill the Honor Griffin before it gets a chance to act. Gasket having more attack dice, I'm going to put him up against this Honor Griffin. And then Tink is going to place himself here. I need to remember to put the stunned effect on our Griffin. At the start of battle, Tink is supposed to roll the build die. Now, since we don't have any attachments for our bots, this isn't really going to mean much this battle, but we'll go through the motions nonetheless. And then there are a couple things we need to do with Gasket at the start of battle as well. His primary canister goes up in his locked slots at 5, which is as full as it can be. And then we also get to put half of his defense stat rounded up in our active slot. So we're starting with 2 defense. Looking at our board, it is the Kobold Tracker that is going to go first. Up here, it is range targeting our weakest gear lock. That is Gasket. And it's rolling 1 attack die because we're on round 1. So Gasket is taking 1 damage, and that damage is going to come off of its defense. Up next is our Honor Griffin, but it is stunned, so it doesn't do anything. And then we have Tink. Now on Tink's turn, he is able to prepare a bot, and we only have 1 at the moment. We would put that into our prep area, and at the same time we would take any attachments that we wanted to attach to this bot. We can see that right now our build die has arrows, and when we rolled that we would have oriented it towards what attachments we wanted to put on this bot, because only the ones that have arrows pointing to them are accessible. In this instance, we don't have any to put on this bot. Now, something else that Tink can do with his bots once per turn is use a dexterity to increase the battery power of the bot. So we can see it starts on this teal number 1, but if we use a dexterity, we can increase it up to 2 battery power. That's essentially how many activations we're going to get out of our bot. We can also spend a dexterity to deploy this bot onto the board. So when we choose to deploy our bot, we will take how many hit point chips it gets, which is 4. And if you have the Ally expansion pack, we can also put a nice little chip on here to signify our bot. That on top. And the last thing we need to do to deploy is actually exhaust our build die. Tink is able to deploy a bot to any space adjacent or diagonal to him. So we are going to put our bot right here. If we want to activate it this turn, we can, but to do anything with our bot, we need to turn down its battery power. And bots get 1 auto attack, so it can do 1 damage to anything adjacent to it. We're going to have it hit our Griffin for 1 HP. Now back over to Tink. Tink has 4 dexterity, and we used 1 to increase the battery power and a 2nd to deploy the bot, so we have 2 left. With those 2, I think we will go ahead and roll 1 attack and 1 defense die. And again, remembering that the maximum amount that we can roll are these stats here. So I couldn't roll 2 attack dice even if I wanted. I'm maxed at 1. Of course, for clarity, we always need to declare our target. We're only adjacent to the Kobold Tenderfoot, so that's going to be our target. And we rolled 2 bones. So slotting in our 2 bones into our backup plan, let's take a look at what we have available to our backup plan. If we used 1 of those bones, we could activate bot mod. This would let us heal an adjacent or diagonal bot for 1 HP, or we could exhaust 1 attachment on it to attach a different learned attachment. We're not going to do that. Our bot hasn't been hit and doesn't have any attachments. We have 2 options for our second bone. Tink could restart an adjacent or diagonal bot to its starting battery power, but that's where it currently is. But the second option, Hot Gasket, is something that our bot could use, and it would let our bot burn all adjacent units for 1 damage. Since our bot is currently adjacent to 3 baddies, that actually seems like a really good plan to me. So we're going to use our backup plan, and our bot is doing 1 damage to each baddie that it is adjacent to. That is Tink's turn, and next up we have Gasket. Now, Gasket has a dexterity of 4, but as one of his dice, he always has to roll this hydro valve. We are going to pick to roll 1 attack die on top of that and 2 defense dice. Gasket only having 2 HP means that it is really important that we keep his defense up as much as possible. Lucky for us, Gasket has a defense stat of 4, so we can usually roll lots of defense on our turn. Again, Gasket's only adjacent to 1 baddie, but we always need to be declaring our target, so we're hitting the Honor Griffin. We have done 1 damage and rolled 1 defense. And as well, we have 2 different bones, and I'm going to show you what the green bone means in just a second. The 1 attack does take out this Honor Griffin, so we'll take that off the board, and its die comes out of the initiative. We are going to slot in our 1 defense, and then we have these 2 bones that we need to slot in, but one is Gasket's green bone. The green bone means that after we slot it in, we have to resolve that spot of the backup plan. So if we were to slot them in like this, we would get no action out of it. We're therefore going to slot them in this order, and then we resolve this hot fix. Hot fix means that Gasket adds or increases a defense die by 1. So, taking this out and sliding everything down, we could either put a third 1 defense die here, or we can increase one of these by 1, and that's what we're going to do. And of course, Gasket's skills always go right back on his mat because part of his innate is that they do not exhaust. Next to take its turn is our Troll Romper. Being melee, it does need to move to get adjacent to a target, and it wants to hit the weakest target, so it's going to try to get adjacent to Gasket. We could put it here or here. We're going to move it over here, so it's potentially a target for our bot as well. And it's rolling 1 attack die against Gasket. Okay, it does 1 hit. We're going to take that hit out of Gasket's defense. And last but not least is our Kobold Tenderfoot, hitting at melee the weakest gearlock it's adjacent to. That is going to be Tink with 1 attack die since we're on round 1. And it rolls 1 hit. Tink has no defense, so that's coming right off of his chip. And we've arrived at the end of round 1. Given that we still have a baddie in our BQ and we have an empty baddie spot, that is going to come into play now. Let's see what we have. It is an Orc Scout with 3 hit points. It rolls 1 attack die at range to the weakest gearlock, and it has the ability Raiding. Raiding would mean that it would get an extra attack die for every additional orc on the battle mat. Lucky for us, there are no other orcs. We're going to give it the available lane 1 marker, and it's 3 HP, putting it in the lane 1 ranged spot. And of course, baddies entering play in the middle of battle go to the bottom of initiative if they're 1 or 5 point baddies. We are going to go directly into round 2 now, and very first to go is our Kobold Tracker. Again, at range, hitting the weakest gear lock. Both Tink and Gasket are at 2 HP. We're going to have this target Gasket because he has defense. So now we're rolling 2 attack dice against Gasket and doing 3 damage. Gasket does have 2 defense up, which we'll take out. And then doing 1 HP of damage from his character. And moving right into Tink's turn. The first thing Tink is going to do is activate the bot. So that uses 1 battery power, but no dexterity. And then the bot gets to do its 1 auto attack. And we're going to have it auto attack this Kobold Tracker up here, which is going to take it off the board. Tink has 4 dexterity to use, but only 3 dice available, so we are going to roll our 1 attack and our 2 defense, and we're targeting the Kobold Tenderfoot that we're adjacent to. Okay, 1 damage and 3 defense. Our 1 damage takes out the Tenderfoot, removing that die from initiative. And our 3 defense going in our active slots, hopefully keeping Tink alive for another round. Next up we have Gasket. Gasket's going to be trying to go after this Troll Romper. Let's see what we can do with him. Now, the opponent that Gasket is up against has thick skin, and he is the only gearlock we currently have that can roll more than 1 attack die. So we're going to try to roll 2 attack dice against it to take it out. We're only rolling 1 defense die. We do need more defense than that, but we're hopefully going to be able to use our backup plan to get that extra defense. And then we also have to always be rolling our Hydro Valve as our 4th die. And Gasket has rolled 3 hits, no defense, but 2 bones. So Gasket rolled 3 hits on the Troll. It has 3 HP, but it also has thick skin. So it only takes 2 damage. And that's not quite enough to take it out. And then Gasket has 2 bones to slot into the backup plan. We will slot them in this way. And then of course we have to resolve the green bone dehumidifier. That would allow us to both increase our hydro canister by 1, but it's already at max. And we get to increase or add a defense die, so we will put that there. Next up is the Troll. So it's melee rolling 1 attack die against the weakest target, Gasket. And the Troll has rolled 1 hit. Gasket has a defense, so that will soak the hit. And last in initiative is our Orc Scout, rolling 1 attack die against the weakest gearlock on the board. That's Gasket again. Gasket only has 1 HP, so we're really hoping for a bone here. We didn't get it. That means that Gasket is unfortunately KO'd, and we have to remove him from initiative. And that's the end of round 2. We'll move right into round 3 and Tink's turn. Tink can no longer activate his bot because it has no battery power, but it will sit there and hopefully take some hits for us from this Troll Romper. Meanwhile, Tink is going to use 3 decks to move 1, 2, 3 in on this Orc Scout. After using 3 decks to move, Tink only has 1 left, and we'll use that to roll 1 attack die. And the Orc Scout is taking 1 damage. Taking that off of our Orc, We move right to the Troll Romper's turn. Being melee, its target is going to be this bot with 1 attack die. We would really like for it to roll a bone, because if it does so, the Careless will take it out. And our troll rolls 2 hits. 2 hits on our bot, so it's down to 2 HP. That's actually not a terrible thing, because now the Orc Scout is going to go again, and targeting the weakest, it could target Tink or the bot. We're going to go ahead and have it target the bot. And the Orc rolls a miss. That is fantastic. And on to round 4, Tink's turn first. We're not going to move him. We are going to roll the 1 attack die that we can roll, and we're capped at 2 defense and we already have it active, so we're going to remove one of these to roll it. We are hoping to get some bones so we can use some backup plan. And targeting the Orc Scout, 2 hits, 1 defense. 2 hits is enough to take out this Orc Scout. And our defense die will go right back where it came from. Once again, it is the Troll Romper's turn, and it's targeting our bot. And with its 1 attack die, it rolls 2 hits. 2 hits is enough to take out our bot. And we move right into round 5 with Tink and the Troll left on the board. So Tink going first. We are going to have to move in. Now all we have to do is last this round against the Troll, because the next round is going to be Fatigue and it will be taken out. That's great because we only have 1 attack die and we would have to do 2 hits to take care of it. So we're just going to roll that 1 attack die. And we only do 1 hit. Because the Troll has thick skin, 1 hit does nothing to it. So we'll move on to its turn, and it will be targeting Tink with its 1 attack die. And the Troll hits Tink for 1. Tink will take that damage out of his defense. And that's the end of round 5. We move right into Fatigue rounds. At the start of a Fatigue round, everything on the board takes 1 true damage. And we have successfully won this battle with 1 HP left on 1 gear lock. Since we've been successful, we get to reap the rewards of this encounter. Let's take a look at our encounter card again. So looking at this card, we see that we'll get 1 progress, a loot each, and a training point, plus for choosing the top option, we get an extra training point. First thing we need to do is reset Gasket's board, but there's nothing to do there. And then let's see what loot Gasket gets. Gasket has a disc scaler. This gives any gearlock 2 buff HP or an assist during a lock-picking attempt. However, Gasket's not able to use loot as normal loot. What Gasket can use loot for is 2 things. During his turn, he can either discard a loot to set the Hydro Valve die on whatever side you would like. And this battle we only saw the green bone side. But the other side of it is this Hydro symbol. And if we rolled that, then our primary canister gets ticked down 1 water unless we've already used a skill that will tick down a water. Or we can discard this loot to increase our power converter to full, which would be 3. And we can use this to heal Gasket's HP. We need to reset Tink's board as well, putting all of our dice back where they go, clearing out our active and backup plan. And let's take a look at what loot Tink has gained. Tink gets this dragon scales. So this says that while the loot is in our loot area, any rolled defense dice can go in our locked slots. That's fantastic because defense in our locked slots don't count against how many we can roll, so we can build up our defense even more. And if we're facing baddies with mischief, they won't be able to touch our defense. The other part of this card says that if a dragon was defeated this battle, you can trade this for an unlocked Dragon Center scale trove loot if available. So something we might want to look at doing with that later. Now we do have a chance to train Gasket twice, and I think it's time to get some skills. So the first training point is going to grab us this cut die. Cut has a single bone on it, and then all of the other sides are this bleed symbol. You can see in the top right, it has a water. That means that when you roll this, it uses one of your canister waters. And this allows you to put a bleed effect on an adjacent unit and a unit behind that unit. So potentially bleeding 2 different baddies if we can line things up properly. And then the second skill we're going to grab is this directive aggro. And I'll put that on here. Directives are interesting because they don't cost dexterity to roll, but you have to use their effects. And if you have multiple directives, you have to use them all together. So what does directive aggro have on it? It has 2 of these feet, which mean Gasket has to move to an adjacent position. It has 1 bone that has to be slotted in because it's red. It has 2 of these energy arcs. This does 1 damage to an adjacent unit. And then it has 1 of these blasts, which does damage to a non-adjacent unit. So the potential to do some damage there, and also the potential to move Gasket. Now we have 2 training points to use on Tink as well, and I think we're going to use them both on attachments for our bots. These are dice we can roll on behalf of our bots to make them more powerful. So the first one we're going to take is this firing arm. Firing arm has these guns on all sides. 1 is a 1 and the rest are 2s, and it has that amount of damage to a non-adjacent unit. And then we're also going to grab Protect Mode. Protect Mode has 1 side that's double bones, and then it has 3 sides that are a single shield and 2 sides that are a double shield. And some of them also have this heart on them. So the shield is a counter, and you would actually put this in an ally's active slots. And then when it is attacked, the bot is going to take the damage instead of the ally. And the number is how many times that will work, so it counts down. And then if we roll the side with the heart, then the bot also gets to heal for 1. The last part of our reward on day 2 is the progress point. So we are now 2 of 8 progress points that we need to face Gendricks. And we've come to the end of the day. So the first option that we would have is opening trove loot, but we have none. The second option that we have is trading loot, but both Gasket and Tink are going to keep the loot that they have. And the third thing that we can do is our individual options. Given that both of our gear locks have taken damage, they're both going to rest and recover. So Tink at 1 HP right now is going back up to his 4. And Gasket was KO'd and he will go back up to his 2 HP. Now, in resting and recovering, we've given up the option to either search for better loot or to scout for baddies coming our way, but we definitely want to be fully healed going into the next day. So I hope you'll join me soon when we see what day 3 holds for us.